doubt was still there, but underneath it all was certainty. This was right. This was meant to be. This was family. The human sat beside the crying pup. By morning, it slept holding her hand. The ceremony took place in the station's observation deck, with the stars spread out beyond the wide viewport like scattered diamonds. Sumi had not expected a crowd, but word had spread through the station. Humans came, of course, all 12 of them. But others came too. Station workers from dozens of different species, security officers, traders, even a few of the refugees from the medical wing, those well enough to walk. Ambassador Velthara stood at the center of the room, tall and dignified in traditional Velran robes that shimmered with embedded light. The pup sat next to Sumi, pressed against her leg as always. Its fur glowed a mixture of blue and green, content and curious. "We gathered to witness something unprecedented," Velthara began, her musical voice carrying easily through the space. "The formation of a family bond across species. This is not done lightly. It is not done often. But when it is genuine, when it is necessary, it is sacred." She gestured for Sumi to step forward. Sumi did, her heart pounding. The pup followed immediately, unwilling to be separated even for a moment. "Han Sumi," Velthara said, "you found this child in darkness, hurt, alone, abandoned by those who should have protected it. You could have walked away. Many would have. But you did not. You sat with fear and pain until it became trust and safety. That act, that simple human act of sitting beside suffering, began this bond." Velthara knelt down, bringing herself eye level with the pup. She spoke in Velran, words flowing like music. The pup's ears swiveled toward the sound, listening intently even though it was too young to fully understand. Then Velthara pulled out a small device. It projected a hologram above them, showing Velran's script that glowed softly in the dimmed room. "These are the traditional words," she explained, switching back to common language. "They speak of duty and love, of teaching and learning, of the bond between parent and child. I will translate as we go." She began the ceremony. It was beautiful and complex, full of phrases about light and darkness, about finding and being found, about choosing family rather than simply being born into it. Velthara asked Sumi questions, each one a commitment. "Will you protect this child?" "I will," Sumi said, her voice steady. "Will you teach this child both the ways of its people and the ways of yours?" "I will." "Will you love this child not as property or obligation, but as family?" "I will," Sumi said, and her voice broke just slightly. "I already do." The pup looked up at her, and its fur blazed that brilliant blue that meant happiness and safety and home. Velthara then turned to the pup. She spoke in Velran again, asking questions it could not yet answer with words. But the pup responded anyway. It pressed against Sumi's legs. It reached up with one paw, wanting to be held. Sumi picked it up, and it settled against her chest, that paw finding her hand, holding tight. "The child has answered," Velthara said softly, "with its whole heart." She placed one hand on Sumi's shoulder and one on the pup's head. Her fur began to glow, and so did the pup's, both of them shining brighter and brighter until the light filled the observation deck. "By the authority granted to me by the Velran Council, by the laws of this station, and by the witnessed choice of both parties, I declare this bond recognized and sacred. Hansumi, you are now guardian and parent to this child. May you both find joy in each other. May you both grow in wisdom. May you both always remember that family is not what we are born to, but what we choose to create." The light faded. The ceremony was done. The room erupted in applause, not just from the humans, but from everyone gathered. Sumi stood there holding the pup, feeling overwhelmed and terrified and happier than she had ever been in her life. Yunji was crying. Hana was smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. Doyen was clapping along with everyone else. Even Minho looked pleased, though he tried to hide it. Administrator Choi approached after the crowd began to disperse. "Congratulations, Dr. Han. You are now officially the strangest case file I have ever had to create." "Thank you," Sumi said. "I think." "I mean it," Choi said, her expression softening. "What you are doing here, it matters. Not just for the child. For all of us, you are showing that family can be bigger than species. That care can cross any boundary. The galaxy needs more of that." Over the next weeks, Sumi settled into her new reality. It was harder than she had imagined and easier at the same time. Harder because the pup needed constant attention. It was still young, still learning. It had accidents. It got into things it should not. It cried when Sumi left for work. even though Yunji or Hana would come stay with it. Easier because the support network held. The human community took turns helping. Doyen built expanding play structures as the pup grew bigger and more energetic. Hana brought plants from the botanical section that helped soothe the pup when it got overstimulated. Yunji learned Velrin lullabies and taught them to Sumi. Even non-humans helped. Minho stopped by regularly, pretending he was just doing security checks but always bringing little treats. A trader named Kelros, who had seen the ceremony, gifted them a specialized data pad loaded with Velrin children's stories. A medical assistant named Tivesh offered to babysit when Sumi had emergency shifts. The pup thrived. It grew rapidly as Velrin Young did. Its vocabulary expanded, learning both human words and Velrin phrases. It started recognizing patterns and solving simple puzzles. Its empathic abilities developed and it began picking up on emotions from others, not just Sumi. Sumi started calling the pup Bomb out loud, not just in her head. It meant spring, meant beginning. The pup responded to the name, chirping happily whenever she said it. 3 months after the ceremony, Velthara returned for the first official check-in. She spent 2 days observing again, but this time her assessment was purely formality. Anyone could see the pup was flourishing. "You have exceeded every expectation," Velthara told Sumi. "Bomb is healthy, happy, developing normally, better than normally. The bond between you is strong and stable. I had a lot of help," Sumi said, gesturing to where Bomb was playing with Hana in the corner. "Yes," Velthara said. "You did. That is what makes this work. Humans understand something that many species have forgotten. Children need communities, not just parents. They need many hands to help them grow." "Will the council continue to approve?" Sumi asked. She tried to keep the fear out of her voice, but Velthara heard it anyway. "Yes," the ambassador said firmly. "The council is impressed. You are setting a precedent, Dr. Han. Other cross-species bonds may follow. You are changing things slowly but surely." After Velthara left, life continued. Sumi worked her shifts at the medical bay. She came home to Bomb, who would launch into her arms the moment she entered. They played together. They ate together. They learned together, Sumi teaching human customs while learning Velrin ones. At night, they still slept close together, though now in the proper bed that Doyen had modified to accommodate them both. And every single night, without fail, Bomb would reach out in the darkness and find Sumi's hand. That small paw, now bigger than it had been but still so small compared to hers, would wrap around her fingers and hold tight. It was a promise, a connection, a reminder of that first night on the cold cargo deck when a frightened creature had finally trusted enough to reach out. Some things did not change. Some things did not need to. One night, 6 months after the ceremony, Sumi lay in bed with Bomb curled against her side. She was reading from a data pad, Velrin children's stories that she stumbled over but tried her best to pronounce correctly. Bomb was listening, eyes half closed, fur glowing soft blue. "Am I doing okay?" Sumi asked quietly. "As your parent? Am I enough?" Bomb looked up at her. The pup had learned enough human language now to understand. It reached up with one paw and touched Sumi's cheek gently. Then it made a sound, not quite a word yet, but close. "Ma," Bomb said. It was the Velrin word for mother, for the parent who provides safety and comfort, for the one who stays. Sumi's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Bomb closer, holding tight. "Yes," she whispered. "I am your ma. Always." Bomb purred, a deep rumbling sound of perfect contentment. The paw found Sumi's hand again, holding on like it always did. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance. The station hummed with life, hundreds of species going about their business, each living their separate lives. But in this small room, a human and a Velrin child slept together. Family not by birth but by choice, connected not by species but by love. And in the morning, when Sumi woke, Bomb would still be there, paw in hand, glowing bright blue with happiness. Some bonds, it turned out, were stronger than any difference. Stronger than fear or custom or the vast distance between stars. All they needed was someone willing to sit in the darkness and stay. The human sat beside the crying pup. By morning, it slept, holding her hand ambassador. Velthara stayed on the station for 2 days, and they were the longest 2 days of Sumi's life. The ambassador watched everything. She observed how Sumi cared for the pup, how she fed it and played with it and spoke to it in gentle tones. She watched how the pup responded, how its fur glowed bright blue whenever Sumi entered the room, how it followed her everywhere on its 6 small legs, how it cried when she left even for a moment. Velthara interviewed other station residents. She spoke with Administrator Choi about Sumi's record. She talked to Minho about the night the pup was found. She spent an hour with Yunji, asking questions about human behavior and culture. Sumi tried to continue her normal routine. She went to work at the medical bay, though she arranged shorter shifts. She came home to the pup, who would launch itself at her the moment she entered, chirping with joy. She played with it, cared for it, loved it, but the whole time fear sat heavy in her chest. They were going to take the pup away. She knew it. Of course they were. The pup was Valren, not human. It belonged with its own people, learning its own culture, growing up in its own world. It did not matter that the pup clung to her. Did not matter that its little paw held her hand every night as they slept. Did not matter that her quarters felt empty and wrong whenever the pup was not there. What mattered was what was best for the child. On the second evening, Velthara requested a meeting in Administrator Choi's office. Sumi arrived to find not just Choi and the ambassador, but also Minho and the other human residents of the station. Yunji gave her a reassuring smile. Park Doyen nodded encouragement. Hana reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. "Please sit, Dr. Han," Velthara said. Sumi sat. Her hands were shaking, so she clasped them together in her lap. "I have spent 2 days observing and gathering information," Velthara began. "I have consulted with the Velren Council and with experts in xenopsychology. I need to explain some things to you about Velren imprinting." Sumi nodded, not trusting her voice. "In Velren culture, imprinting is sacred," Velthara continued. "When a pup imprints, it forms a psychological and empathic bond that shapes its entire development. Breaking that bond causes severe trauma, sometimes permanent damage." "I did not mean for that to happen," Sumi said quickly. "I just wanted to help." "I did not know," Velthara held up a hand. "I know you could not have known. Imprinting typically happens only with Velren parents or carefully selected guardians. Cross-species imprinting is documented but rare. With humans, there are no records of it happening at all." "Why did it happen?" Choi asked. "Humans are unusual," Velthara said. She looked at Sumi with an expression that might have been respect. "Your species has strong empathic responses, even though you are not empathic in the way my people are. You feel deeply. You connect easily. The pup was traumatized, desperate for safety and comfort. Dr. Han provided both without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. She sat with it through its fear. She stayed when anyone else would have left. That is just what humans do," Yunji said quietly. "Exactly," Velthara said. "And that is why this happened. The pup recognized in Dr. Han what it needed most. Safety, unconditional care. What you call pack bonding, we call family forming. It is the same instinct expressed differently. So what happens now?" Sumi asked. The question felt like swallowing broken glass. Velthara was quiet for a long moment. "That depends on you, Dr. Han. The Velren Council has authorized me to offer you a choice. An unprecedented choice. What choice? You can choose to send the pup back to Velren Prime with me. We will do everything we can to ease the transition. It will be placed in our finest rehabilitation center. Eventually, when it is older and stronger, it will be integrated into a Velren family unit. It will learn our ways, our culture, our language. It will grow up among its own people." Sumi felt tears burning in her eyes. And it will be traumatized," Velthara said bluntly. "Not as badly as if we simply took it, but the separation will hurt it. Hurt you both. The bond is real, Dr. Han. Severing it has consequences. What is the other option?" Choi asked. "You can keep it," Velthara said, looking directly at Sumi. "You can become its legal guardian, raise it, care for it, teach it, love it." The room went completely silent. "That is possible," Sumi whispered. "The council has granted provisional approval," Velthara said. "This would be the first legal cross-species adoption in this sector. But there would be conditions. Many conditions." "What conditions?" Sumi asked. Velthara pulled up a data pad and began reading. "You would need to undergo training in Velren culture and child-rearing practices. A Velren cultural liaison would visit regularly to ensure the pup is learning its heritage. You would need to teach it our language as well as yours. When the pup reaches adolescence, approximately 8 of your years from now, it would be given a choice. It could choose to stay with you or return to Velrin's space. Either decision would be honored. 8 years, Sumi repeated. Velrin pups develop slower than human children, Velthara explained. It would be the equivalent of a human teenager, old enough to understand what the choice means. And if I agree to all this, Sumi asked, then I would perform a formal bonding ceremony tomorrow. You would become, in every legal and cultural sense, the pup's parent, guardian, family. Sumi looked around the room, at Choi, who was watching her carefully, at Minho, who had his arms crossed but was nodding slightly, at her fellow humans, who all looked like they were holding their breath. I need to think about this, Sumi said. Of course, Velthara said. This is not a decision to make lightly. Take tonight. We will meet again tomorrow morning. After the meeting ended, Sumi walked back to her quarters in a daze. The pup was with Hana in the botanical section. She had promised to pick it up after the meeting, but she needed a moment alone first. She sat on her bed and put her head in her hands. This was insane. She was a doctor. A xenobiologist, yes, but she was not a parent. She had no experience raising children, human or otherwise. She worked long hours. Her quarters were tiny. She had no family nearby to help, just the small human community on the station. How could she possibly raise a Velrin pup? Her door chimed. She looked up to find Yoonji, Doyun, Hana, and to her surprise, Minho all standing in the corridor. May we come in? Yoonji asked. Sumi nodded and they filed into her small quarters. We heard what happened, Doyun said. Well, Minho told us. He was there. I should not have, Minho said, looking uncomfortable. But I thought your community should know. Are you going to do it? Hana asked. Are you going to keep the pup? I do not know, Sumi said. I want to. More than anything. But what if I am not enough? What if I mess this up? This is a child. A Velrin child. It deserves the best, and I am just... You are just the person who sat on a cold floor for 6 hours with a crying, injured creature because you could not stand to leave it alone, Yoonji interrupted. You are just the person who gave up sleeping in a bed for 2 weeks to make sure it felt safe. You are just the person who made that pup's fur glow bright blue for the first time in who knows how long. Yoonji is right, Doyun added. You are exactly the right person for this. But I will need help, Sumi said. So much help. Then we will help, Hana said simply. All of us. I am not an expert on human culture, Minho said. But I have seen enough to know this. Humans do not raise their young alone. You do it together. As groups, as communities. That pup would not just have you. It would have all of us. Sumi looked at them. At these people who had become more than colleagues over the years. Who had brought toys and supplies without being asked. Who had spent hours researching how to care for a creature none of them had ever met before. Who were offering to help raise a child that was not human. Not theirs, not their responsibility. Why? She asked. Why would you all do this? Because it is right, Yoonji said. Because that pup needs you and you need support. Because humans take care of each other. And because, honestly, we have all gotten kind of attached to the little furball already. Despite everything, Sumi laughed. It came out more like a sob, but it was a laugh. I want to do it, she said. I want to keep the pup, raise it. Be its family. Then we will help you, Doyun said. Whatever you need. They stayed for another hour, talking through logistics and concerns and plans. By the time they left, Sumi felt steadier. Still scared, but less alone. She went to the botanical section to pick up the pup. Hana had it in her lap, reading to it from a data pad even though it could not understand the words. The pup was listening anyway, ears forward, fur glowing soft green. When it saw Sumi, it scrambled out of Hana's lap and ran to her, chirping happily. Sumi picked it up and it nuzzled against her neck, that small paw finding her hand immediately. I talked to Ambassador Velthara, Sumi said quietly to the pup. She says you imprinted on me, that we are family now if I choose it. And I do choose it, if you will have me. The pup's fur blazed bright blue, so bright it lit up the whole botanical section. It chirped and chirped, pressing closer, holding her hand with both front paws now. Sumi held the small creature against her chest and felt something click into place in her heart. Fear was still there. The human sat beside the crying pup. By morning, it slept. Holding her hand, the first 3 days were the hardest. Sumi had arranged her small quarters to accommodate her unexpected guest. She pushed her desk into the corner and created a nest of blankets on the floor, soft and warm. She adjusted the temperature controls to match what the Velrun database recommended for their young. She replicated special food based on the nutritional requirements listed in the xenobiology archives. The pup would not touch any of it unless Sumi ate first. She sat on the floor next to the nest, eating a ration bar slowly while the pup watched with those enormous eyes. Only after Sumi swallowed several bites would the pup creep forward and try the food she had prepared. At night, the pup refused to sleep in the carefully constructed nest. It would cry softly until Sumi gave up and lay down on the floor beside it. Only then would the small creature settle, curling against her side with one paw firmly wrapped around her finger. Sumi's back ached. Her neck was stiff. She had not slept in an actual bed since bringing the pup home, but every time she looked at the small creature sleeping peacefully against her, she could not bring herself to care about the discomfort. On the fourth day, Lee Yunji came to visit. Yunji was one of the other humans on the station working in communications. She knocked softly on Sumi's door, then entered carrying a large box. "I heard about your new roommate," Yunji said, setting the box down. "Brought some things that might help." The pup peeked out from behind Sumi's leg, curious but cautious. Yunji crouched down, making herself small and unthreatening. She smiled but did not try to approach. "Hello there, little one," she said gently. "I am not going to hurt you. What is in the box?" Sumi asked. "Research," Yunji said, standing up and opening the container. "I spent the last 3 days reading everything I could find about Velrun pups. Figured you could use the help." Inside the box were toys, specialized food supplements, and several data pads loaded with information. Yunji pulled out a soft object that looked like a ball but made gentle chiming sounds when moved. "Velrun young respond well to auditory stimulation," Yunji explained. "Helps with emotional regulation." She rolled the ball gently across the floor. It chimed softly as it moved. The pup's eyes followed it, ears twitching with interest. After a moment, it took a tentative step forward, then another. It reached out with one small paw and touched the ball. The chime made it jump back, but then it tried again, more confidently this time. Sumi felt her throat tighten. It was the first time she had seen the pup show interest in anything besides staying close to her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That is what we do," Yunji said simply. "Humans stick together, and we help those who need it even if they are not human." Over the next week, other humans on the station found reasons to visit. Park Doyeon, an engineer, arrived with plans for a better sleeping area. He spent an afternoon building a raised platform with soft cushions that would be easier on Sumi's back while still allowing the pup to sleep close to her. Kang Minho stopped by twice, officially to check on the situation, unofficially to bring treats he had researched might be good for young Velruns. He would not admit that he was worried, but the way he carefully observed the pup's behavior told Sumi everything. Even Administrator Choi visited once, running her scans and taking her notes. When she left, she said nothing about the clear protocol violations of having so many visitors. She just reminded Sumi to file her daily reports on time. The pup began to thrive. Its injuries healed quickly with proper care. The bioluminescent fur grew brighter, glowing with soft light that changed colors based on mood. Sumi learned to read those colors. Soft blue meant content. Green meant curious. A flickering orange meant hungry or tired. Red meant fear or distress, but that color appeared less and less as the days passed. The pup started eating without needing Sumi to eat first. It played with the toys Yunji had brought, chasing the chiming ball across the quarters with small chirps of delight. It explored its space with growing confidence, though it always kept Sumi in sight. At night, the pup still slept pressed against her, one paw holding her hand. But now it was not out of fear. It was comfort, connection, trust. Sumi found herself talking to the pup constantly. She told it about her day, about the patients she treated, about Earth and her family. The pup could not understand the words, but it listened intently, its head tilted and ears forward. Sometimes its fur would pulse with colors that seemed to respond to her emotions. She realized the pup was empathic in ways deeper than she had first understood. It felt what she felt. Her calm made it calm. Her happiness made it playful. Her stress made it anxious. She started being more careful about her own emotional state. She took time to breathe, to center herself. She found that caring for the pup was actually helping her cope with the stress of her work. Coming home to those bright eyes and that happy chirp made even the worst days bearable. On the 10th day, Park Doyun brought someone new. A young woman named Kim Hana, who worked in the station's botanical section. "Hana has an idea," Doyun said. "Tell her, Hana." Hana was shy, speaking quietly. "I was reading about Velrun homeworlds. They have these plants that grow there. The scent helps calm the young ones. I might be able to grow something similar in the botanical labs. If you want," Sumi nodded, surprised and touched. "That would be wonderful. Thank you. Also," Hana added, "if the pup ever needs a quiet place, somewhere with plants and soft light, the botanical section is always open. I work night shifts mostly, so it would just be me and the plants, peaceful." It struck Sumi then what was happening. The human community on the station was coming together around this one small creature. They were forming a network, a support system, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. This was what humans did. They found something that needed protecting and they protected it. Together. 2 weeks after finding the pup, Sumi received a message from Administrator Choi. "Medical Bay, now we have a situation." Sumi's heart sank. She looked at the pup, which was curled in its sleeping area playing with a toy. It looked up at her with trusting eyes. "I will be back soon," she promised, even though it could not understand. "I promise." She asked Yunji to watch the pup and hurried to the medical bay. When she arrived, Choi was waiting with a tall figure she did not recognize. The figure was covered in silver fur and stood at least 7 feet tall, elegant and dignified. "A Velrun. An adult Velrun. Dr. Han Sumi," Choi said formally. "This is Ambassador Velthara. She has come about the pup." Sumi felt her world tilt. This was it. They were taking the pup away. Velthara's voice was soft and musical. "Dr. Han, I have come to express the gratitude of my people. Abandoned pups rarely survive without proper care. You have done something remarkable." "I just did what anyone would do," Sumi said quietly. "No," Velthara said. "You did what most would not. You gave time, energy, care to a creature not of your species. This is uncommon in the galaxy. But I am told it is common among humans. I need to see the pup," Velthara continued, "to assess its condition and determine the next steps." "Will you take me to it?" Sumi nodded, unable to speak. She led the way back to her quarters, her heart pounding. When they entered, the pup looked up from where it played with Yunji. It saw Sumi and chirped happily, bounding over on all 6 legs. Then it saw Velthara and froze. The ambassador knelt down gracefully. She spoke in a language Sumi did not understand, soft and flowing. The pup's ears swiveled toward the sound. It tilted its head, clearly recognizing its own language even if it was too young to fully understand. Then the pup turned back to Sumi and pressed against her legs, peeking out at the ambassador from behind her. Velthara's expression was unreadable. She stood slowly. "May I examine it?" Sumi nodded. She sat on the floor and the pup climbed into her lap immediately. Velthara approached carefully, running scanners over the small creature. She placed her hands on either side of its head, her own fur beginning to glow softly. The examination lasted several minutes. Finally, Velthara pulled back. "The pup is healthy," she said. "Better than healthy, thriving." She paused and something complicated crossed her face. "There is something else. Something I did not expect." "What?" Sumi asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The pup has imprinted on you," Velthara said. "Not just bonded. Truly imprinted. It sees you as parent, as family. This is extremely rare across species barriers. I have never heard of it happening with a human." Sumi looked down at the pup in her lap. It looked back up at her, fur glowing that soft blue that meant contentment and safety. "What does that mean?" she asked. Velthara was quiet for a long moment. "It means we need to talk about the future. And you need to understand what you have begun here, Dr. Han, because this is not something that can be easily undone." The human sat beside the crying pup. By morning it slept. Holding her hand, Officer Kang Minho started his morning patrol through the cargo decks at exactly 0600 hours, just like every other day. He liked routine. Routine was safe, predictable, boring in the best possible way. In his 15 years working station security, he had learned that boring was good. Boring meant no explosions, no smugglers, no diplomatic incidents that required 17 different forms to resolve. He walked past the first row of containers, his scanner in hand, checking the inventory logs against the physical cargo. Everything matched. Good. He moved to the second row. That was when he saw them. At first, his brain could not quite process what he was looking at. A person slumped against a cargo crate. His hand went to his weapon instinctively. Was someone hurt? Dead? Then the person moved slightly and he saw the medical uniform. Hansumi, he knew her. Everyone on the station knew the human doctors. There were only 12 humans on Kelmar Station total, and they tended to stand out. But what was she doing down here? Then he saw the creature. Small, glowing faintly, curled up against Sumi's leg, one tiny paw resting on her hand. What in the 7 sectors? Minho muttered. He approached carefully, not wanting to startle either of them. As he got closer, he could see that both the human and the creature were asleep. Sumi's head was tilted at an angle that would definitely give her a terrible neck ache. The creature was a mess of injuries and matted fur, a Velran pup. He recognized it from the security bulletins. There had been reports of Velran trafficking in this sector. Several ships had been boarded, cargo confiscated. This must be one of the pups that got left behind when the traffickers ran. He should wake them immediately. He should call this in. There were protocols for this exact situation. Unauthorized contact with potentially dangerous fauna. Violation of station regulations. The list went on. But Minho found himself hesitating. He had worked with Sumi before. Last year, during the station plague outbreak, she had worked for 3 days straight without sleep, treating anyone who came through the medical wing doors. He had seen her cry when she lost patience, seen her laugh with joy when the sick recovered. Humans felt things deeply, wore their emotions on their faces in ways most species found uncomfortable. Right now, even in sleep, she looked peaceful. Her hand was curved protectively around the pup's small body. The pup's fur glowed softly, a sign of contentment in Velrans. Whatever had happened here, it had not been harmful. Minho made his decision. He cleared his throat loudly. Sumi jerked awake, her eyes flying open. She looked disoriented for a moment, then awareness crashed over her face. Her gaze dropped to the pup, which was stirring from the noise, and then up to Minho. "Officer Kang," she said. Her voice was rough from hours of not speaking. "Dr. Han," he replied. "You want to tell me what is going on here?" Sumi looked down at the pup, which had woken fully now and was pressing itself against her leg, frightened. She placed a gentle hand on its back. "I found it last night. It was hurt. I could not just leave it." "You know there are protocols," Minho said. He was not angry. "Just stating facts, I know," Sumi said quietly. "I am sorry. I should have called it in. I could not leave it alone," Minho sighed. "This was going to be complicated. I need to report this. You know that, right? Administrator Choi will need to be informed." "I know," Sumi said again. She looked defeated. The pup made a small sound, that whimper chirp that Minho had heard in training vids about Velran behavior. It was a distress sound. The pup was picking up on Sumi's emotions, humans and their pack-bonding instincts. It was going to get this woman in serious trouble. "Stay here," Minho said. "I will make the call." "Do not move." He stepped away and activated his comm unit. "Officer Kang to Administrator Choi. We have a situation in Cargo Bay 3. I need you down here." The response was immediate. "What kind of situation, officer?" "The kind that requires your direct attention, ma'am." There was a pause. "On my way." Minho walked back to where Sumi sat. She had not moved, just as he had instructed. The pup was in her lap now, still trembling slightly but clearly seeking her comfort. "Humans," Minho said, shaking his head. "You people will bond with anything, will you not?" Sumi looked up at him. "Would you have left it here?" Minho considered that. Honestly, he probably would have called it in and moved on. That was the sensible thing to do. The professional thing. But looking at the small creature, at the injuries that marked its body, at the way it clung to Sumi like she was the only safe thing in the entire universe. "No," he admitted. "I guess I would not have." Administrator Choi Hyejin arrived 10 minutes later. She was a serious woman, efficient and practical. She had to be. Running a neutral station in one of the busiest trade routes in the sector, she took in the scene with one sweep of her sharp eyes. "Report?" she said to Minho. "Found Dr. Han sitting with an abandoned Velran pup at 0615. Both were asleep. The pup appears injured but stable. Dr. Han admits to unauthorized contact." Choi turned her attention to Sumi. "Dr. Han, what were you thinking?" Sumi met her gaze steadily. "I was thinking that a child was hurt and alone and needed help. A Velrin child, Choi said. Not a human child. Not your responsibility. Does that matter? Sumi asked. It is a child. It was crying. Choi closed her eyes briefly as if gathering patience. There are rules, Doctor. Rules that exist for good reasons. Velrin pups are empathic. Contact with unknown species can cause psychological damage. You could have heard it. Or I could have helped it, Sumi said quietly. And I did. Look at it. The pup was indeed looking healthier than when Minho had first seen it. The fur glowed brighter. Its breathing was steady. It was still obviously injured, but there was a calmness to it now that had not been there before. Choi studied them for a long moment. The pup is classified as abandoned property under station law. Standard protocol is to hold it in a containment facility until we can contact the Velrin authorities. That process can take weeks. Containment facilities are not equipped for young empathic species, Sumi said. Her voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath now. The isolation and stress would damage it. You know this. What would you suggest instead? Choi asked. There was something in her tone that Minho could not quite read. Let me care for it, Sumi said. I am a trained xenobiologist. I can provide the proper environment and medical treatment. I will take full responsibility. You understand what you are asking? Choi said. If this pup becomes aggressive or dangerous, it will be euthanized. That would be on you. If it becomes ill and dies under your care, that would also be on you. Not to mention the violation of protocols you have already committed. I understand, Sumi said. Choi was silent for a long time. Then she sighed. You humans. You and your impossible hearts, she turned to Minho. Officer Kang, your official report will state that Dr. Han discovered an abandoned Velrin pup and, given her expertise in xenobiology, was granted temporary custody pending contact with Velrin authorities. Understood? Minho blinked, then nodded. Understood, ma'am. Dr. Han, Choi said. You have until we make contact with the Velrin government. The pup stays with you in your quarters. You will provide regular medical reports. If there are any problems, any at all, I want to know immediately. Am I clear? Very clear, Sumi said. Her eyes were shining. Thank you, Administrator. Do not thank me yet, Choi said. You have just taken responsibility for an injured, traumatized, empathic alien child. This is not going to be easy. I know, Sumi said. But she was smiling as she looked down at the pup. The small creature looked back up at her and its fur brightened noticeably. Choi shook her head and turned to leave. I will arrange for supplies to be sent to your quarters. And Dr. Han? Get some sleep. You look terrible. After Choi left, Minho helped Sumi stand. Her legs nearly gave out from sitting in one position for so long. He had to steady her. You need to get to medical, he said. Have someone check you over. I need to take care of the pup first, Sumi said. The pup needs you healthy, Minho pointed out. Come on, I will walk you to your quarters. You can care for it there. Sumi bent down carefully and picked up the pup. It weighed almost nothing. It curled against her chest, that tiny paw finding her hand again, holding on like it was afraid she might disappear. As they walked through the corridors, other station residents stopped to stare. A human carrying a Velrin pup was not something you saw every day. Minho heard the whispers starting already. By the time they reached Sumi's quarters, he knew the entire station would be talking about this by the end of the day. Humans and their pack bonding. It was going to be a lot of paperwork, but watching Sumi settle the pup carefully on her bed, watching the way the small creature refused to let go of her hand even as she tried to gather supplies, Minho found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, the paperwork would be worth it. Some things mattered more than protocols. The human sat beside the crying pup. By morning, it slept. Holding her hand, the lights in the medical wing had finally dimmed. Hansumi pulled off her gloves and tossed them into the disposal unit. 18 hours. She had been on her feet for 18 hours straight, treating refugees from the Outer Rim conflicts. Burns, broken bones, radiation sickness, the usual horrors that followed war across the stars. She was tired. The kind of tired that settled into bones and made even thinking feel like wading through thick mud. But her shift was over now. She could go back to her quarters, collapse on her bed, and sleep for the next 10 hours if she was lucky. Sumi grabbed her jacket from the hook and headed for the exit. The Kelmar space station was quiet during night cycle. Most of the traders and travelers had retired to their quarters or the few establishments that stayed open late. The main corridors would be mostly empty, but they would also be bright and long. She did not want bright. She did not want long. She took the side passage instead, the one that cut through the lower cargo decks. It was darker, shorter, and hardly anyone used it. Perfect. The metal floor clanged softly under her boots as she walked. The cargo deck smelled like oil in old containers. Large crates lined the walls, stacked high with goods waiting to be shipped or claimed. Somewhere above, the station's recyclers hummed their constant song. Then she heard it. A sound. Small. Broken. Something between a whimper and a chirp. Sumi stopped walking. She held her breath and listened. There it was again. Crying. Something was crying in the darkness between the crates. She should keep walking. Station protocol was clear about unknown creatures in the cargo areas. Report it to security. Let them handle it. She had just worked 18 hours. She was exhausted. She should just go to bed. But her feet were already moving toward the sound. Sumi pulled out her small flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the shadows between two tall stacks of containers. She saw movement. Something small and low to the ground, huddled against the wall. She stepped closer, keeping her movements slow and quiet. The creature was small, no bigger than a dog. It had 6 legs tucked under its body and fur that seemed to glow faintly, though the light was weak and flickering. Large eyes bigger than seemed possible for its small face turned toward her. Those eyes were wet with tears. Sumi's breath caught. She knew what this was. A Velrin pup. She had seen images in the xenobiology databases. The Velrins were a peaceful species, known across the galaxy for their empathic abilities. Their young were supposed to be protected, cherished. This one was alone, abandoned. The pup made that sound again, that heartbreaking whimper chirp. Its fur flickered weakly, and Sumi could see injuries on its small body, cuts, bruises, signs of neglect and rough handling, trafficked. The word came to her mind unbidden. Velrin pups were valuable to the wrong people. Their empathic abilities made them prized as tools, as commodities. This little one had probably been cargo, illegal cargo, and when the shipment became too risky, someone had thrown it away like trash. The pup watched her with those enormous, tear-filled eyes. It did not run. It was too weak to run. It just cried softly and watched her, waiting to see if she would hurt it or ignore it or worse. Sumi knew what she should do. She should call security. Officer Kang would come down here with his scanner and his protocols. The pup would be logged as abandoned property. It would be processed, probably sent to a holding facility until someone figured out what to do with it. She had heard about those facilities. They were not kind places. The pup whimpered again. Sumi made her decision. She sat down on the cold metal floor. The movement made the pup flinch, pressing itself harder against the wall. Sumi held up her empty hands, showing she had no weapons, nothing to hurt with. She did not reach toward the creature. She did not try to grab it or force it to come closer. She just sat. She made herself small, tucking her legs to the side, keeping her posture relaxed and non-threatening. "Hey," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, barely above a whisper. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The pup could not understand Korean. It probably could not understand any human language. But tone was universal. Kindness translated across species in ways words never could. Sumi started humming. An old lullaby. Something her grandmother had sung to her when she was very small, when the world felt too big and scary. The melody was simple and soft, rising and falling like gentle waves. The pup's crying quieted slightly. Not stopped, but softer. It watched her with those huge eyes, confused perhaps by this strange creature that sat on the cold floor and made gentle sounds. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Sumi's legs started to go numb from sitting, but she did not move. The pup needed to know she was not a threat. It needed to know that not everything in this universe wanted to hurt it. Her communication device buzzed. A message from Lee Unji, one of the other human staff. "Where are you? Shift ended 2 hours ago. Everything okay?" Sumi pulled out the device and typed a quick response with one hand, keeping her movements slow so she would not startle the pup. "Fine. Had something to take care of. Be back later." She put the device away and went back to humming. Another hour passed. The station's ventilation system kicked in, sending a slight breeze through the cargo deck. The pup shivered. It was cold down here, cold and alone and hurt. Sumi slowly reached into her jacket pocket. The pup's eyes tracked the movement and it tensed, ready to flee even though it probably did not have the strength. She pulled out her water ration. A small metal bottle. She unscrewed the cap carefully, the sound loud in the quiet space. Then she pulled off the cap completely and set it on the floor. She poured water into the shallow cap, making a tiny bowl. The sound of liquid splashing made the pup's ears twitch. Sumi slid the cap forward across the floor. Not far, just a few inches closer to the pup. Then she pulled her hand back and settled again, resuming her humming. The pup stared at the water, then at her, then at the water again. Sumi waited. The hours stretched on. 4 hours since she had found the pup. 5. Her colleagues sent more messages. She sent vague replies. The station moved through its night cycle and the cargo deck grew even quieter. Then finally movement. The pup uncurled slightly. One leg extended, then another. It crawled forward so slowly it was painful to watch. Each movement seemed to cost it dearly. But it kept coming inch by inch until it reached the water. It drank. Small, desperate laps. The water was gone in seconds. Sumi's throat tightened. How long had it been since this little one had water? Food kindness? She reached into her other pocket and pulled out an emergency ration bar. She broke off a tiny piece smaller than her thumbnail and placed it near where the water cap had been. The pup ate it, then collapsed, exhausted from even that small effort, but it did not retreat back to the wall. It stayed there, closer to Sumi now, not touching, but near enough that she could feel the faint warmth of its small body. Sumi kept humming. She told the pup about Earth even though it could not understand. She told it about the rescue dog her family had when she was young, how scared it had been at first, how patient her grandmother had been, sitting with it for hours just like this until it learned that home could be safe. The pup's bioluminescent fur began to glow just a little brighter. Not much, but enough to notice. The station systems announced the start of morning cycle. 6 hours had passed. Sumi's entire body ached from sitting in one position. Her back screamed at her. Her legs had gone from numb to pins and needles and back to numb again. She did not care. The pup had stopped crying. Its breathing had evened out into the rhythm of sleep. And there, barely perceptible in the growing light of morning cycle, she felt it. A small paw. 6 delicate claws, resting gently on her hand. The touch was feather-light, tentative, as if the pup was testing whether this strange creature would pull away or strike or disappear like everything else good in its short life. Sumi held perfectly still. Her eyes filled with tears, but she kept them silent. She did not want to wake the pup, did not want to break this fragile, precious moment. The pup slept on, one tiny paw holding her hand.